I picked up some of those tri-ruled pads, like you get for elementary school.
With the dotted line in the middle?
Yeah, I got those.
Good evening, Ashley. Thanks for hanging out with us again.
It's my pleasure, Jay.
I'm glad to see you.
I'm glad to see you too.
Tell me about your mother.
Well, my mom was born in South Africa.
Yeah.
And she grew up there.
As did your father?
Well, my dad was born in Germany,
okay.
Though he did also grow up in South Africa. And
just in case it's relevant, do you know at about what age he moved?
To South Africa?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, my dad moved to South Africa when he was about 10 years old.
All right.
He and his brother were put on a plane by their parents, not speaking English, and simply having their passports around their necks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was South Africa a largely English-speaking country at the time?
Well, English and Afrikaans, of
But
course.
not German?
No. But they were the airline staff, stewardesses and so on, were given specific instructions, and they took very good care of my dad and his siblings, and they turned out fine. So,
if you had to compare your own childhood to that of a TV sitcom, what do you think would come closest?
Oh my dad might be a mix of Felix from The Odd Couple with some Mr. Bean in there, but that he might hate me for saying that.
I think they're both likable characters.
Yeah.
And
my mom?
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say maybe like Buffy's mom, a little bit.
All right.
But that could be wrong because I only watched 3 seasons.
That's enough. Buffy's mom was very protective.
Yeah, sure.
Sometimes a little bit overprotective.
Maybe.
She was certainly engaged in her child's life.
Yeah, sure.
And then there's your brother, right?
Yeah, my brother. He
younger than you?
Yes. Adrian is 3 years younger than me, so he's 31.
Okay. This is probably the part of the story that is going to be relatable to the smallest amount of people because everybody has a completely different family, but I still think it's important regardless. Yeah. You first came out to yourself, which is inevitable, and then to your close friends, and then your less close friends, some of your coworkers.
Yeah, what is sort of like concentric circles.
What is the score at work right now? It was 10 out of 12, I think, last time.
9 out of 12.
9 out of 12. Still there?
Yes, okay. Yes. Of the 3 people remaining, one of them is my boss, so that's kind of a special situation. And then 2 other people that I just haven't really been able to get a read on how they would react and so on.
So how long after you came out to yourself did you decide to talk to your family about it? And who did you talk to first? And how did you prepare?
Right. I mean, so I came out to myself in, I guess, April, May of 2010. And then I knew that I wanted to come out to my parents in person as opposed to over the phone or over email. I suppose another option would have been that I could have sent them a letter. I know that's how some people within the LGBT acronym come out to their parents, and there's nothing wrong with that. I chose not to, though, just since I had some hunches about how my parents would react, but I didn't have a strong feeling about it, and so I wanted to do it in person so that, depending on the avenues the conversation took, I could bob and weave or whatever. I could react and so on.
Also, your handwriting's not the best.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Einstein.
Nor should it be, because we've been typing since fifth grade.
I mean, it's sort of a side note, but I picked up some of those tri-ruled pads, like you get for elementary school.
With the dotted line in the middle?
Yeah, I got those. I mean, I probably should not be this excited, but because I want to practice my handwriting to make it more girly. Because it has sort of a girl's handwriting. There's no right or wrong way about handwriting as long as it's legible, I suppose, but it's often more curvaceous, more flowery, more expressive. And so that's one thing I've been wanting to work on for my handwriting.
Yeah.
But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's fine. You decided that you wanted to tell them in person?
Yes. Yeah, I wanted to tell them in person because
Did you want to tell all three of them at the same time?
My brother, I wasn't really worried about coming out to him. I mean, I wasn't sure if he would get it right away, but he's really sort of a live and let live kind of guy. So I knew that even if he wasn't okay with it right away, he wouldn't be long before he'd be fine with it. So I wasn't too worried about Adrian.
Did you think, however, that as soon as your brother knew, your parents would know, or as soon as your parents knew, your brother would know?
No.
No?
Well, just since my hunch was that my parents would not be okay with it. And so if I had told them first, they would probably clam up and not tell anyone. My brother, my hunch is that he would be okay with it. And so supposing I told him, he would either just out of general etiquette, not necessarily talk to my parents yet, or perhaps he may also have sensed that they wouldn't have necessarily been overjoyed, and for either or both of those reasons, really, I didn't think my brother would have. But so yeah, I wanted to talk to my parents in person. I mean, and my brother in person, but it so happened that the nearest opportunity I had in 2010 was over Thanksgiving.
Who had you already come out to when you decided you were ready to tell your parents?
I had come out to my very closest friends in Dallas.
And as we determined, they were all totally fine with it.
Yeah.
Except for maybe one guy who wasn't completely on board with the name change, but imagined that he would be soon.
It wasn't so much the name change. The way he phrased it to me at the time was, I don't really see you as Ashley yet. I still see you as birth name. But once I'm able to see you as Ashley, I'll call you Ashley. That's what that one friend had said.
All right.
But anyway,
it doesn't sound so much like hesitation as just, here's where I'm at in my head.
Yeah.
And it'll take me extra
And it worked
time.
out just fine. It was, not a big deal.
So you'd had some experience with the spiel, as it were, and had encountered no resistance, really. And so were probably buffeted.
Buffeted?
I think that's the right word. You were...
Well, it depends what the rest of the sentence is.
You were encouraged?
Bolstered.
As opposed to discouraged, bolstered.
Yeah. I was encouraged, yes. I was...
And you said, next time I see them in person, it's going to go down.
The main reason I want to come out to my parents sooner rather than later is just because I generally have a pretty close relationship with them, and so I talk to them over the phone every week or two, and I wanted to share this part of my life with them. And so I couldn't really do that until I came out to them.
Mm-hmm.
So Thanksgiving was the next time I was going to see them. And it so happened that my brother was living in Cape Town, South Africa for a year and a half or so, which is not really pertinent to this story other than to say that normally my family would get together for major holidays and that kind of thing. But given the distance, my brother wasn't able to make it for Thanksgiving, but would instead come for winter family time in December instead.
Did you go to them for Thanksgiving, or did they come to you?
I went to them for Thanksgiving. So they live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I went up there to visit them for Thanksgiving, and my trip was booked for Wednesday through Saturday. And so that meant Saturday was kind of out because I was leaving midway through or what have you. And I chose not to do it on Wednesday or Thursday, just since I didn't want to mess with their heads over Thanksgiving. In part because my parents, especially since retiring, they're kind of into entertaining and that kind of thing. So they like to have the big Thanksgiving, like 20 people kind of thing.
Okay.
They make hors d'oeuvres and they tend bar and they like to make their guests happy. And I'm sure they do a wonderful job of it. I'm just sure that's enough on their mind that they wouldn't have just wanted for their daughter to have come out to them just earlier.
Sure.
So that left the Friday, which had the advantage as well that all of the, I don't want to say the stress of Thanksgiving, but obviously there are things to tend to and meals to cook and stuff to put in and out of the oven, but all that would be behind them. So on Friday, that's kind of when I slated it. And we went out for dinner on Friday, just since my parents are both kind of tired of cooking from the day before. And then after dinner that Friday, we drove home and we were just sitting around the kitchen table. And I told them, I came out to them.
Do you remember what you said? Was it different than what you were telling other people?
It was different, only in the sense that what I had generally told other people was, by the way, I'm transgender.
Okay.
And I would usually elaborate.
Yeah.
But it would go from there. My parents, though, I wasn't sure. I'm sure they'd seen the word before, but I didn't know if they knew what it meant or if they had different perceptions of what they thought the word meant.
All right.
What I told them was, I think I was born the wrong gender.
Okay.
I think that was approximately the phrase I used. And then, conveniently or otherwise, they may have been in shock or something because they weren't really saying anything. So I had a chance to elaborate, and I said, I think I was supposed to have been born a girl.
Yeah. And these are the only people in the world responsible, however unconscious it may be, for the gender that you were born. Did you ever consider that they might feel responsible?
Well, it's plausible they may have thought that God had something to do with it.
Oh, okay. Sorry, that didn't occur to me.
Well, me neither, because I'm an atheist. But, so to me, it's just science and random chance.
Yeah.
And what they said to me at the time was, well, I should phrase it as, the words that came out of their mouth were, well, we support you.
All right.
And I thought, and in my head, which I did not say out loud, was, really?
Who said that?
That was my mom.
Okay. Were you watching your dad to see if he agreed?
I think he nodded his head or something like that.
Okay.
And I knew something didn't add up. What I was expecting was a best case scenario of them being indifferent about it.
It's hard to be indifferent about that. I don't have children, but I would imagine it'd be very hard to be indifferent.
Perhaps indifferent is not the right word. Maybe something along the lines of, we're okay with that, but we're going to have to get used to it, but...
What did you say out loud when inside you were saying, really?
What I think I said was, well, thanks for your support, or something. I mean, because it was at that point where I was sort of in shock, because at first I believed them.
Okay.
But then my
you take people at your word.
Yeah. I mean, but then my bogosity sensor went off, because I was thinking, wait a sec, something doesn't add up here. And so I soon realized that they probably didn't support me. That either they had interpreted what I said as meaning something else, or that they thought of support as something different than what most people think of as support. I mean, over later phone calls with my mom, she wouldn't come out and say it, but she seemed to think that I might have come out to her as gay. Admittedly, I am gay. I'm a lesbian.
Right.
But when I come out to people, I will usually say something along the lines of, by the way, I'm attracted to women, or something.
Did you not get the chance to go over the bullet points when you were telling your parents?
I think I tried to go over some of them, but the bullet points are a lot easier to go over with someone when they're actively listening or when they're receptive.
Okay.
But I could tell that my parents were not interested in this idea.
You get the sense then, unconsciously, that they wanted to stop having that conversation, and you
Oh yeah.
conceded?
I think my mom started wiping the counter, or it may have been, this is just a guess, but she may have not wanted to have been at the kitchen table anymore. So I had mentioned about my theories on whether they had interpreted something else, or whether perhaps support meant something else. And indeed, that kind of played into it as well. That part of what makes a lot of this hard with my parents is that it's a bit like the 20 questions game or something, where as soon as this subject comes up with my parents, what tends to happen is that they'll clam up. And so they'll tend to give me sort of yes/no answers or very brief answers. So I'll ask them a question, and they'll say yes or no or whatever, and then I would have to ask them well, why do you feel that way? Or so it was like pulling answers out of them. As far as the other segment of my hunch that maybe support meant something different to them than what it did to other people, was it seemed to be that they thought I may have been into cross-dressing, which there's nothing wrong with. And that if I'd done that on my own time,
right,
that would be something that they would be not necessarily okay with, but that's something that they could tolerate.
At the very least, they were probably imagining that you would never think of doing it at work.
Oh, no. They probably had visions of the so-called man address kind of thing. And no, they thought it was ridiculous, the very notion.
So they're not the sort of people that make a distinction between transvestite, transgender, and drag queen?
Oh, goodness, no. No, it's not so much that they don't make the distinction, but they're probably not aware of those fine distinctions.
Okay. Where does it stand today, and what are you hoping for the future?
Over subsequent phone calls with my parents, just to kind of flesh out some of the other bits.
Have you not seen them in person since?
I did see them over winter family time in December. And
things were still tense.
Well, I'll come back to that part. But over subsequent calls, just to kind of paint a fuller picture, my mom, for instance, asked me, she'd ask me more than once on separate occasions, so what's the benefit to you? As if I had been doing sort of a cost-benefit analysis of, oh, well, looks like there are more advantages and disadvantages. I should be transgender.
Yeah, wow.
Which, I mean, obviously she's concerned, and that much is normal. At the same time, if this was a choice of mine, I would not have chosen this. Because, it's really hard. It's not an easy thing to deal with. On a call with my dad, for example, he once mentioned to me, well, you could face a lot of discrimination if you decide to do this. And, I mean, he's right about the discrimination part, but it's not like I just woke up one morning and thought, oh, this will be fun. I'll be transgender now. And on more recent calls with my dad, so there was a recent legislative initiative in New York State about marriage rights. And up until this particular call, I didn't know how my dad stood on the gay marriage thing. So I asked him, well, what did you think about the vote in New York last week? And he said something like, well, I don't see why they couldn't just have contract law to take care of
civil union thing,
something like that. And then so what I asked him as a kind of follow-up thing was, do you think that people choose to be gay, or that they, as they say, are born that way? And my dad said, well, I'm not sure. I think the science is still out on that. Which, of course, is bullshit. But
yikes.
Part of what makes this even more difficult is just that, obviously, I want my parents to come around and so on. But I'm very aware of the principle of cognitive dissonance, the idea that people tend to hold on to their beliefs because they're the beliefs they hold on to, in a sense. That when trying to change someone's mind about a core belief, you have to do so very gently in many ways, that if you come at it head on, someone's first reaction is often to be defensive of their idea without necessarily even listening to what your point of view is. Yeah. And so, even though I very strongly disagree with my dad about that, I think I said something like, well, as you might guess, I disagree, or something like that. But you'd asked earlier about how my parents reacted the next time that I saw them, which was in December. And they generally pretended like things were fine. And for the most part, things were fine. I mean, since other than this one thing that happens to be my entire identity and whatever, they tend to be okay with who I am and so on. So they did not bring it up. I mean, as I had mentioned on, I think, the last show, I had my toes and nails painted 7 days a week for the last 9 months or what have you. Over Thanksgiving, I removed my nail polish from my hands, in part because I knew I was only going to come out to them on the Friday. And yeah. Then in December, well, actually, it's not true. I was about to say that I did not have my fingers painted, but I actually had a clear, transparent coat, which made my fingernails kind of glossy, but they didn't have a specific color to them. What I was hoping is that perhaps the casual visitor may not be aware and whatever, but that my parents over time, through the course of my visit in December, would notice and perhaps begin to internalize things.
Okay.
As it would happen, I think they were kind of oblivious to my clear nail polish. But on the other hand, I did leave my toes painted. And of course, most of the time, I'm wearing shoes and what have you. But as is the case on a wintry morning, sometimes you wake up a little late and walk downstairs for breakfast in your pajamas and so on. So I would intentionally not wear slippers or anything on my feet.
Okay.
And I'd be sitting at the kitchen table eating breakfast, and my mom would be chatting with me or what have you, and I could tell that she would kind of glance down at my toes, but she was trying to make it look like she wasn't glancing down at my toes. And she wouldn't say anything about it. So I knew that she saw it, but she was, I don't know if she's embarrassed or angry or upset, but she didn't just say anything. I mean, the larger picture is that my parents, as I mentioned, they tend to climb up about this kind of thing, but my hunch is that, or at the very least, it's plausible that my parents may think this is some kind of phase or something.
You're sort of old for phases.
Well, age aside, this is not something in which one has a phase.
Yeah. How did your brother react? How did you tell him?
So I saw my brother in December. We were wrapping gifts, and it was sort of a quiet time, and can't speak for everyone who's gift wrapping. It's the kind of thing where obviously you don't want to screw it up, but it's not a terribly mentally intensive sort of thing. No. It wasn't like he was doing his taxes or something. So I told my brother.
What is it, the by the way version, or more like the parent version?
Yeah, I think it was along the lines of, I just wanted to let you know that I'm transgender, by the way. And I knew that, well, I had a strong hunch that he would eventually, or very, very shortly, would be used to it. But actually, Adrian's been incredibly supportive, and what at the time, he kind of thought about it for a bit, and he said, oh, okay. Well, your family, and I just want you to be happy. Which, I mean, you can't hope for much better than that.
No.
Yeah, that was pretty great.
Sounds about perfect.
Yeah. So Adrian's been just incredibly supportive, and I consider myself lucky to have a brother like him.
Now seems like a pretty good time to ask you to teach me something girly.
Sure. So what I have is some products from NARS.
What?
Yeah.
That means nothing to me.
I know that. This is a combination of bronzer and blush from NARS.
What was the first one?
Bronzer.
Bronzer.
Right.
Okay.
This is probably old hat to your female viewers, but for people who may not be aware, bronzer offers a more bronzing type of shade.
We're talking about like
on one's cheeks, for example. It's a brownish powder which is added to one's skin through a brush. It's a good day-to-day bronzer. It's one that's I can try to show some of the color here, but it's sort of a medium brown, and I find that it works quite well for me. But what's also nice is that it comes with a blush along with it, and the two of them pair quite well together. When applying bronzer, you can think of it as if you're some rich snooty girl with giant sunglasses. So if you got these stupid giant sunglass things on, but that dumb image aside, it's essentially it's the area around where that would be. So it's sort of like right there, and then oftentimes I've heard it described as sort of a 3 shape, so you can have like some there and then down one's chin a little bit. And most of it is going to be on one's cheeks, and then perhaps just a small amount across the chin.
Is this something that you have to try to blend in? Because I don't see people walking around with 3 shapes.
Right, there's a certain subtlety to it, and indeed most of it is for the sake of helping to define one's cheekbones and the like. So it's not so much providing a color per se, but a enhanced definition of one's face.
Interesting. Okay.
Right.
Are you wearing that now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then the blush, that just goes just above one's bronzer, so sort of like up in this area, or the apples of one's cheeks. I mean, I'll apply some bronzer there, and then with the same brush, typically what I'll do is use sort of the back 2/3 of the brush for the bronzer, and then I'll just after that part I'll use sort of the tip for the blush just to apply some as well. I mean, as you might guess, there are many bronzers and blushes around, but and even among NARS they have several, but I can, as far as the names of these colors, now, I mean, one thing you may notice with cosmetics is that a lot of them have memorable names, which is part of, I think, just the overall branding, that people find it more enjoyable to have products with fun names, but also just that they're memorable in and of themselves, that you can tell people about, oh, I like this particular color, and someone's able to remember that. So the bronzer is named Laguna, and the name of the blush is Orgasm.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Okay.
So I suppose that the pink is in one's cheeks is meant to evoke at least memories of that.
Right.
So, but it's a nice blush, and it's not ostentatious as a name like that may or may not imply, but it's worked quite well for me.
They're so silly.
They can be, but just wait till you get to nail polish, because they have all kinds of goofy names.
Yeah.
In part because even among one brand, there may be dozens and dozens of colors, and they've got to name all of them. So they gotta, yeah.
There was a contest when I was a freshman in college that Crayola was running to name some new colors.
Oh yeah.
One of them happened to be the exact color of the top of the table in our lounge in the dorm.
Did you name it tabletop?
We named it Lounge Table.
Awesome.
We didn't win.
Yeah.
One of the others we named was Internal Bleeding. Thanks for hanging out with us this evening.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Jay. Happy to do it.
It's always enlightening, and I'm looking forward to it again next time.
As am I.
Good night.